Hello. Today I'm going to be going over how I decide what gear ratios I'm going to use at different tracks. Now, the big way I end up doing this is by doing a lot of math. All right. We have a specific formula that we use that helps me calculate what speed I should be at a given RPM. All right. And that formula is what we see right here. So speed at a given RPM with a given gear. All right. So we see our factors here. You got your RPM, you got your diameter of your rear wheel, you got your secondary, which is going to be your drive from your transmission to your rear wheel, your primary, which is going to be from your crank to your trans, your trans ratio, which is self-explanatory, it's what goes on in your trans, and then this final factor of 366, I can't remember exactly what it's for. I just know that you have to use it as like a correction factor for all this math to work. Anyways, so the RPM I like to use is my limiter, which in this case is 6,250 RPM. The reason why I use that is in flat track racing, you end up spending a little bit of time at your limiter. So that's the easiest way to go ahead and calculate what speed you should be getting in the straights close to the end of it. All right, so in this case, we're going to be using a RPM of 6,250 RPM. All right, so first thing I want to do is I want to get as many of these numbers figured out as I can. All right, so first thing we're going to have up here is our RPM, which is going to be 6,250. All right, that's going to be my limiter of my Sportster. Now, the next thing I want to use is the diameter of the rear wheel. I measured it. It came out to 28 inches. This includes the tire and the wheel itself. All right. It doesn't have to be too exact, just about where it should be. If you're running a 19-inch tire, this is probably about where you're going to be at. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and I'm going to skip the secondary for now. And I'm going to go ahead to just calculating these three here all together. All right, and the reason I'm going to calculate these three here all together is so I can figure out what different speeds I can be at based on what I change that gear ratio to from the transmission to the rear sprocket. All right, so first we're going to do our primary to our trans. So the primary in all Sportsters, if it's unchanged, is 1.6. All right, the trans ratio I'm going to be using is going to be first gear. All right, so first gear for a stock 95 and up Sportster with a unchanged transmission is going to be 2.69. All right, so we multiply those two together and it gets us 4.3 on the dot. All right, so now we got 4.3. That's our primary and our trans ratio multiplied together. Now we're going to go ahead and multiply that by 366, and that's going to get me 1,573.8. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put that right here. All right, so then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to calculate this up here. All right, so we take our 6,250, multiply it times 28, and that's going to get us 175,000. All right. All right, so we got 175,000 up there. So that took care of our RPM and our diameter of our wheel. We got our primary, our trans ratio, and our final correction factor. That got us that number there. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and start to calculate our different secondaries that we're going to put in. All right, so secondaries, this is going to be your ratio from your counter sprocket, which is the sprocket located on your transmission, that goes and connects directly to your rear wheel. All right, so there's a couple of different common ratios I like to use on my bikes for ease. All right, I got a couple of different. So the main thing for me is I only have one counter sprocket right now. That current counter sprocket I have is a 23. All right, so, but I have a couple of different sprockets for the rear. We'll go over just 3 of them right here to show you how this math works so you can calculate it yourself at home. All right, so the first one we're gonna have is my one for super short tracks. It's gonna be 65 is the rear. And then the front, like I said, is 23. All right, we divide those by each other and we end up getting 2.83. All right, so the next one we're gonna do is 60 over 23. And that's gonna get us 2.61. Then our next one is gonna be 55 over 23. And that's gonna get us 2.39. All right, so now what we're gonna end up doing is we're gonna use these 3 factors multiplied by this number that we calculated earlier, and that's gonna give us our, I believe it's denominator here. So we'll go ahead and do that for each one. All right, so we'll label them each 65, 60, 55. All right, so let's see, for 65, we multiply that 2.83 times 1,573.8, and it gets us 4,453.9. For the 60, it's going to get us 4,107.6, and for the 55, it gets us 3761.4. All right, so that's what we end up getting whenever we multiply 2.83 times 1,573.8 gets us this number. For the 60 gets us that. For the 55 gets us this. All right, so now that we figured those out, let's go ahead and do some more math. All right, so now we're going to figure out our different RPMs for each one. All right, so we already know this is our constant up here, so we'll go ahead and do that. So we're going to take our 175,000 and we're going to divide it by 4,453.9, and that's going to get us a 39.29 miles per hour. All right, then we do it for 60. So we do 175,000 divided by 4,107.6, and that gets us 42.6 mile per hour. And then we'll do the same for this final one of 55, and it gets us 46.53 mile per hour. All right, so now that we figured that out, maybe ask me, what's this all mean? All right, so the main reason I would want to know this is because depending on the size of the track, it's going to depend on what kind of speed I'm going to hit on it, right? And if I can hit that speed in first gear, that's awesome, because then I don't have to shift. Not having to shift saves you time, keeps your speed up. All right, so I do a lot of short track racing. A lot of these short tracks, I can get away with running this gear because I'm not going to top out past 40 going into any of the corners. All right, so that's why we end up doing that. So anyways, that's how you calculate your final speed given your different RPMs. Obviously these factors can change depending on if you do some trans work or some work in your primary, but this is the down and dirty, quick and easy way to do it. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. If you have any comments about this, I'd love to hear them. Anyways, thanks for joining me. I hope you learned something here today, and I hope you have a great day.